Hi, I'm kchoi. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I mostly post videos about consulting, education, general career advice, as well as travel vlogs, but occasionally I'll post a book-related video. I have a playlist of all my booktube type videos here, so you can watch that if you want to see more. Today, I'll be sharing what I read so far in 2019, and I know it might seem a little bit random because it's August, and usually you do this either every single month or you do it at the end of the year, but I actually just completed my Goodreads challenge, so I thought it would be a perfect time to share. This is actually only the second year I set an official Goodreads reading challenge for myself, and last year I set it for 18 books because it was 2018, thought that that would be cute, and I only read 6. So for 2019, I thought that I would be a little bit more realistic, and I set my goal at 12 books, so 1 book per month, and I have managed to complete it. I know there are people who read like 20 books a year, 30, 50, 100, and it's hard not to compare myself to them, but I'm proud that I set a goal and I achieved it, and so hopefully next year I can read even more, and hopefully I'll still continue to read more books this year and pass my goal by a lot. So I have all my books here, well, not all of them, because some of them are back at home in LA at my parents' house because I read them like on the plane while I was flying over there and just left it at home, but I have most of them here. First up is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a fantasy book, and in this world there are 4 Londons: Grey London, Red London, Black London, and White London. And there is, of course, magic in this world, and there are certain magicians who are able to travel between those different Londons. I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy novels usually, or I just haven't read that many aside from Harry Potter. This one I feel like leans a little bit more sci-fi as well, just because of the like travel between the different worlds, and I just thought the characters were super interesting in this one. In any of my descriptions of these books, I don't want to give too much away, so I'm gonna be a little bit vague, but I ended up rating this one a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I do remember finding this to be a little bit slow like in the middle of the book, but it definitely captured my attention right away as I started reading, and it picked up a lot towards the end and I couldn't put it down, so overall a great read. Next is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This was such a refreshing and unique read. So this is about a woman named Eleanor who is a little bit different. She is not the most social. She has her routines. She doesn't really interact with people. She's an outcast, but she ends up developing a friendship with this guy named Raymond who works at the same company as her. And with the aid of that friendship, she kind of starts to discover who she really is or come to terms with her past and things like that. I believe this book is set in Scotland from what I remember, so it was like interesting to see like little Scottish isms, I guess, throughout the novel. And it's a fairly short read, which I really appreciate because shorter books just give me more momentum to read more books. So yeah, I ended up rating this a 5 out of 5. Next on the list is China Rich Girlfriend by Kevin Kwan, and this of course is the second book in the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. I also read Rich People Problems, which is the third book in the trilogy, so I'll just talk about these two together. I don't have that one, but it is here. I'm sure by now everyone knows the general story and vibe, I guess, of the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. So Crazy Rich Asians, as well as the other 2 books in the series, are just filled with the same extravagance, opulence, like whatever other synonyms you can think of. To be completely honest, I can't exactly say like where each book ends and the next one begins. They all kind of flowed together for me. But if you liked the movie Crazy Rich Asians, or if you read the first book but haven't read the next 2, then I would recommend it. It's fun just to revisit those characters and revisit some of the locations, as well as go to some new locations in the other 2 books. It's definitely a very entertaining series, which is why I rated both of these books a 4 out of 5, because it honestly was just really fun. And of course, I love the Asian representation that Crazy Rich Asians has been able to bring into the media, so I am all for supporting these books. Next is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is another book I really enjoyed. So it's a realistic fiction novel historical, and I realized I really like that genre. This one takes place in a town called Shaker Heights, Ohio, where everything is perfect. You got the white picket fence, you got the moms involved in the PTA, like that kind of environment. In particular, there is a family called the Richardsons with 4 children, and the mother of these kids is very obsessed with that whole image. The Richardsons own this other house that they rent out to different people, and one tenant moves in. It's a mother and a daughter, and this mother and daughter do not fit the mold at all of Shaker Heights, but their lives become very intertwined with the Richardsons. As you read and get to know the characters and get to know the relationships between the different characters, it reveals different secrets and mysteries, so it just really is a page turner. And so I rated it 5 out of 5. I was just about to make a comment about how I tend to give pretty high ratings to books. I'm not the harshest critic, which I still think is true, but this next book, which is Black Klansman by Ron Stallworth, did not really impress me as much. I picked this one up at the airport at one point because I just didn't have a book to read and I wanted to read something, and it was $10. I also had heard about the movie and just thought that I would give it a read. Now, this book is a memoir and it's a true story, and the story itself, just the premises of it, are really interesting. It's about a Black police officer / detective who goes undercover and infiltrates the KKK, essentially. I can see why they took that and decided to make it into a movie, because that just sounds so interesting and crazy and unbelievable, right? But the book itself was honestly kind of boring. I feel like I would have rather read an article on this story and I could have gotten the same amount of information as the novel. I appreciate the story and the actual events and all of that, but I just feel like it wasn't written in a way that was as engaging as it could have been, so I gave it a 2 out of 5. The next book I read was Animal Farm, and this was a reread because I did read this back in like middle school and high school probably, but I was looking for a short book to read, and again, I really like that short books give you momentum to continue reading more. So I was looking for a short one and decided to reread this one. In Animal Farm, a farmer named Mr. Jones gets essentially kicked out of his farm because all the animals have had enough of doing his work and want to work for themselves and decide to take over the farm. But of course, this is deeper than just a story of anthropomorphic animals that take over a farm. It's Orwell's commentary on Stalinism and dictatorship and things that were happening, I believe, leading up to the Russian Revolution. I had to look that up just to make sure I was correct. I think there's a reason that students are usually required to read this in school. Again, I think I read it twice in school. It honestly is really well written. It's again short, but it's very meaningful. So 5 out of 5. Next book I read was Becoming by Michelle Obama. This of course is Michelle Obama's memoir, and it takes you all the way from her childhood to getting to the White House with her husband Barack and beyond. I thought this book was inspiring on multiple different levels. One, she didn't come from the best, financial situation, but was able to become really successful. She was kind of thrown into this political world as Barack very quickly made moves and started moving towards the presidency. And she not only was going along for the ride, but was a huge support to him in getting him to where he got to. And 3, you see how she balances her career with her marriage, with being a mother, and just how she decides to make certain compromises to do what's best for her and for her family. I thought the book was very honest. It was interesting to kind of see what her perspective was on certain big events that I saw unfold, as they happened. So yeah, I loved it and I gave it a 5 out of 5. I just really miss her and the Obamas. All right, the next one is What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. Murakami is known for his kind of sci-fi, fantasy-esque novels like 1Q84, Wind Up Bird Chronicle, Kafka on the Shore, I believe. I've only read 1Q84, which I did really enjoy, but it's definitely out there. It's a little bit different. Now, this one is not like all of those other books because this is a memoir. He actually wrote this over a long period of time, I believe. I can't remember the exact period of time, but he sort of was writing bits and pieces along the way. I picked this one up because I saw Ariel Bissett talk about it in one of her videos, and it was intriguing to me, especially because I'm a runner. So in this book, he talks about his experiences as a long distance runner. He talks about his mentality about running and how that kind of transfers or intersects with his mentality about writing. And I felt like it was part memoir, but also part self-help. Like you could get inspiration in how to manage your own time and your own life and your hobbies with your work and things like that. Reading this was kind of like meditating, so while I did enjoy it, it wasn't like the most exciting read, but it was pretty interesting. I think on Goodreads I gave this a 4 out of 5, but I would say maybe more like a 3.5. Next was Persepolis, which actually I think is 2 books in one, but I'm just counting this as one because I got the complete Persepolis, so the combined edition, and I'm gonna butcher the author's name, but I think it's Marianne Satrapi. Persepolis is actually a graphic novel, as you can see. This was the first graphic novel that I ever read, and it is an autobiographical one about the author's experiences growing up during the Islamic Revolution, moving to Europe away from her parents to get an education, and just all of her experiences from that. I picked this up for a couple of reasons. So one was because I had never read a graphic novel and I was interested in reading one, and the second reason was because I just don't and didn't really know anything about the history of the Islamic Revolution, about Iran, and I just thought I would expand my horizons a little bit. Despite me knowing next to nothing about the historic events around this book and having a really different and separate culture from that of the author, I found this to be really relatable. Even though she grew up in a completely different time and place, she still goes through the same struggles that children and preteens and teenagers go through. And even though my parents aren't from Iran or from the Middle East, they are immigrants, and their parents and their parents' parents have suffered through oppression, and it's just interesting that, you know, even though cultures can be so different, there are those common themes that tie us all together. So in that way, I found this to be really beautiful, and I gave it, surprise, surprise, a 5 out of 5. Next on the list is Make Time by Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky. This is a self-help slash how-to book where the authors share different tactics that they use to make more time for things that matter to them. You can see on the inside cover here their main framework for making time. So you have here choosing a highlight for every day, something that matters to you that you want to accomplish, lasering in on it and focusing on it, reflecting on it. So thinking about what you did well, what you would change, and then doing it all over again. And in the middle there, you also have different ways that you can energize yourself. So the book is really structured around those 4 components and different tips that they have to achieve those. I don't think that the tactics they give are anything brand new, and I think they're aware of that. It's really just about creating a different frame of mindset when you approach your schedule every day. I started reading this, or was in the middle of reading this, when I decided to start regularly making content for my YouTube channel again. So this was really helpful just to refresh my perspective on time, because I almost gave up thinking I didn't really have time to make videos, but this helped me just to see that it's not about the hours you have in a day, but just how you use it. And being intentional about setting aside time and not letting distractions and other work take over. And I was actually doing lots of the tactics that are in this book, but I don't think I was using them to the best of my advantage. So this was an easy read. It's something that you don't need to sit down and read all in one go. You also don't even need to read it from start to end. You can kind of jump around and see what inspires you. So in that sense, it's a good reference and resource. In terms of like a self-help book, I don't think it really changed my perspective too much. It kind of just helped redirect me back to that kind of perspective, if that makes sense. So I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. So now is when I confess that I haven't exactly finished my Goodreads challenge. So this is the 12th book on the list, which is Educated by Tara Westover. And I have 30 pages left. So I haven't exactly finished yet, but I'm gonna finish this today. So by the time you see this, I'll have finished my Goodreads challenge. I just really need to record this today. So that is what I'm doing. Educated is yet another memoir. I guess I've read several of these this year. The author of this book grew up in rural Idaho, and her parents, and specifically her father, was a survivalist. She also grew up in a Mormon household, but a very conservative Mormon household. And growing up, she never went to school. She actually didn't go to school until she decided to apply to and was accepted to Brigham Young University. She grew up not learning the same history as everyone else, not doing the same types of activities. You could say say that she lived a very sheltered life, but I kind of don't want to say that either because it's her experiences growing up in that type of environment that really pushed her to the success that she saw later in life. Again, don't want to give away any details, but I have been loving this. I don't think the last 30 pages will change my mind. This is really a story of resilience because despite her circumstances of how she grew up, of different traumas she experienced, and wanting to give up at many points throughout her journey, she did not give up. Sounds kind of corny now that I say that aloud, but I definitely highly recommend this if you're looking for a memoir to read. I think out of the memoirs I read this year, this is my favorite, so obviously I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. All right, so those are the books. Those are the books I read this year, plus a few more that I don't have with me. I just picked up a few more books the other week, so once I finish that last one, then I will be moving along to the next one and seeing how much I can surpass my Goodreads reading challenge by. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's not like most of the content I post. I kind of feel like that meme where it's like nobody blank me. So a lot of you were asking about what books I was reading this year. Although I do think there was like one person who commented and asked for me to share about the books I was reading, so this is for you. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and I will post more book-related content. Leave any more suggestions of videos you want to see in the future down in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye!